Have you ever watched an old celebrity interview and felt like something was off? At the time, these moments might have seemed normal or even funny, but looking back, they feel uncomfortable, even disturbing. Here are 20 celebrity interviews that, in hindsight, are pretty disturbing. Marilyn Monroe final interview before her death in 1962. Marilyn Monroe's final interview offered a glimpse into her state of mind just weeks before her untimely death. Fame doesn't fulfill you. It warms you a bit, but that warmth is temporary.
Since this article is going to be on fame, I like to state here and now, fame is fickle.
These were the words of Marilyn Monroe during her final interview in 1962 that revealed a woman grappling with the ephemeral nature of fame. In the summer of 1962, Marilyn Monroe invited Life magazine journalist Richard Merriman to her Brentwood home for what would become her last interview. Photographer Alan Grant captured images of Monroe that day. However, beneath the surface, Monroe was battling personal demons, including failed marriages, health issues, and professional setbacks. On August 4, 1962, Monroe spent the day at her Brentwood residence. Her housekeeper Eunice Murray was present that evening. In the early hours of August 5th, Murray noticed Monroe's bedroom light was still on. Unable to get a response, she alerted Monroe's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who arrived and broke into the room, finding Monroe deceased. The official cause was acute barbiturate poisoning, leading to a ruling of probable suicide.
Crowds of the curious are held back at a respectful distance from the private funeral that arranged for Marilyn Monroe.
Monroe's death sent shockwaves worldwide, and the grief and speculations were unbearable. Britney Spears with Diane Sawyer. In 2003, Britney Spears sat down for an interview with Diane Sawyer, expecting a professional conversation. Instead, she found herself shamed and emotionally broken on national television. At just 21 years old, Britney was still recovering from her highly publicized breakup with Justin Timberlake. The media had painted her as the villain, while Justin freely shared intimate details about their relationship, fueling rumors that Britney had betrayed him. One of the most uncomfortable moments came when Sawyer confronted Britney with a harsh comment from a political wife who had publicly stated that if she had the chance, she would shoot Britney for being a bad influence on young girls. Rather than defending her, Sawyer used this to question whether Britney had brought the criticism on herself. Britney, clearly caught off guard, tore up on camera, struggling to find words to defend herself. She even said, "You have betrayed him."
A year that would test a lot of people.
As the interview continued, Britney's composure crumbled. She fought back tears, visibly struggling to defend herself. She was just a young woman going through heartbreak, yet she was being treated like a criminal. Meanwhile, Justin Timberlake was celebrated, his career soared, and he faced no backlash for sharing intimate details about Britney. Looking back, the interview is deeply disturbing. At the time, the world didn't know the full extent of Britney's suffering. She was already under immense pressure from her family, the media, and her management. Just a few years later, she was placed under a conservatorship, stripped of her freedom, and controlled in nearly every aspect of her life. This interview now serves as a reminder of how Britney was vilified, humiliated, and denied the basic respect she deserved. Janet Jackson's 2004 Super Bowl aftermath interview, a one-sided blame game in 2004, Janet Jackson became the center of one of the biggest controversies in television history after her Super Bowl halftime show with Justin Timberlake. During their performance, Justin pulled off part of Janet's costume, exposing her for less than a second in what was later described as a wardrobe malfunction. The moment caused massive backlash, but instead of sharing the blame, Justin walked away while Janet's career took a major hit. Later that year, Janet appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show to discuss the incident. From the start, it was clear that the pressure was all on her. Oprah asked if Janet wanted to apologize to the public, even though she had already explained that the malfunction was unintentional. Janet said, "If I offended anybody, that was truly not my intention."
If I offended anyone, that was truly not my intention.
Throughout the interview, Janet looked uncomfortable and frustrated, as the conversation kept framing her as the one responsible. She remained graceful and professional, but the lack of accountability on Justin's part was glaring. Meanwhile, radio stations, TV networks, and even the Grammys punished Janet, essentially blacklisting her, while Justin's career continued to thrive without consequences. In the years that followed, public opinion shifted, and Justin eventually apologized, 17 years too late. Jim Carrey's bizarre interview at the 2017 New York Fashion Week. In September 2017, Jim Carrey attended a Harper's Bazaar Icons event during New York Fashion Week. But instead of giving a typical red carpet interview, he delivered an odd philosophical rant that left the interviewer, Kat Sadler, completely stunned. As Kat approached him for an interview, Jim started circling her and immediately dismissed the event, saying, "There's no meaning to any of this. I wanted to find the most meaningless thing I could come to, and here I am."
I wanted to find the most meaningless thing that I could come to and join.
Jim doubled down, saying, "You don't exist. We don't matter. There is no me." When Kat complimented him on how great he looked, Jim shrugged and replied, "I didn't get dressed up. There is no me. There's just things happening."
There is no me.
There's no you.
No.
We're not here. This is a dream.
There's just things happening.
The moment was deeply uncomfortable as Jim's detached, existential rambling made it impossible for Kat to conduct a normal interview. People watching couldn't tell if he was joking, being philosophical, or truly having a breakdown. In light of Jim Carrey's later struggles with depression and disillusionment with Hollywood, this interview now seems like a moment where he was rejecting fame in real time. Megan Fox's 2009 Jimmy Kimmel disturbing interview. In June 2009, Megan Fox appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. During the interview, she casually shared a troubling experience from her early years in Hollywood. Instead of concern, Kimmel and the audience laughed, making this moment even more disturbing in hindsight. At just 15 years old, Megan Fox was an aspiring actress who landed a small extra role in Bad Boys 2, 2003, directed by Michael Bay. In the film, she was asked to wear a bikini, high heels, and a cowboy hat while dancing under a waterfall in a club scene. Since she was underage, she couldn't legally sit at the bar with a drink, so Bay had her dance suggestively instead. Years later, while discussing this on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Megan described how uncomfortable the experience was. She said, "I had just turned 15, and Michael Bay had me dancing under a waterfall in a bikini."
I had just turned 15, sitting underneath the waterfall getting soaking wet.
Jimmy said, laughing, "That's a microcosm of how all our minds work."
Yeah, well, that's really a microcosm of how all our minds.
To this, she replied, "Yeah, well, that's kind of the problem." Instead of expressing concern, Kimmel and the audience continued to laugh. In hindsight, it highlights how normalized the sexualization of young actresses was in Hollywood. Lindsay Lohan's painful 2007 David Letterman interview. Lindsay Lohan was one of Hollywood's biggest young stars in 2017, but she was also struggling with personal issues, including multiple stints in rehab. When she appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman to promote a new project, the conversation quickly turned into an uncomfortable interrogation about her struggles with addiction. As soon as Lindsay sat down, Letterman started making jokes at her expense. He sarcastically asked, "Aren't you supposed to be in rehab now?"
Aren't you supposed to be in rehab now?
Lindsay forced a laugh and tried to steer the conversation back to her film, but Letterman wouldn't drop it. He continued pressing, saying, "How many times have you been in rehab?" Lindsay replied, "Several." She smiled, hoping he would move on, but Letterman kept pushing. "What are they rehabbing?" he asked as the audience laughed. Lindsay sighed and replied, "We didn't discuss this in the pre-interview. You can't make a joke of it."
You can't make a joke of it.
The moment was painful to watch. Instead of being treated with kindness, Lindsay was publicly mocked for her personal struggles. She tried to maintain her composure, but it was clear she wanted to escape the conversation. Was this the most uncomfortable interview of Whitney Houston's career? In 2002, Whitney Houston sat down with Diane Sawyer for an interview on primetime. Looking back, especially after her tragic passing in 2012, this interview feels harsh and exploitative. Diane Sawyer wasted no time before diving into rumors. She bluntly asked, "Is it true that you've used cocaine, marijuana, pills?" Whitney, visibly frustrated, replied, "No, I don't do crack. Let's get that straight. Crack is whack."
We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack.
This phrase would become infamous. But at the time, Whitney was trying to defend herself from relentless scrutiny. Sawyer continued pressing, even questioning Whitney's finances. "How much money do you have left?" Whitney laughed awkwardly and said, "I have plenty of money." But it was clear that the line of questioning was making her uncomfortable. Things got worse when Sawyer listed a series of drugs Whitney was allegedly using. Whitney, shaking her head, fired back, "I want to see the receipts. Show me the receipts." She was trying to fight back against the accusations. Instead of discussing Whitney's legendary talent, the interview became a public trial. Watching it today, it's hard not to feel that Whitney was being pushed into a corner rather than given a fair conversation. Paris Hilton's uncomfortable exit from Good Morning America. In 2011, Paris Hilton appeared on Good Morning America to discuss her career and promote her latest reality show. At the time, she was one of the most famous socialites in the world, known for her influence on pop culture, fashion, and reality TV. However, the interview became uncomfortable. During the conversation, GMA host Dan Harris shifted away from her show and instead questioned her status as a celebrity. He bluntly asked, "Do you ever worry about your moment having passed?"
Do you ever worry about your moment having passed?
Paris glanced off camera, clearly caught off guard. She tried to recover, responding in a tone about her continued success in business and television. But Harris wasn't done. He followed up with, "Do you feel like people are overshadowing you now?"
Times that the people who have followed in your footsteps, like Kim Kardashian, are overshadowing you?
At this point, it was obvious that the comparison was aimed at Kim Kardashian, who had skyrocketed to fame. Moments later, before the interview could wrap up, Paris stood up and walked off camera. Harris, left with no choice, awkwardly turned back to the audience to cover for the abrupt ending. At the time, many saw this as a diva moment, but in hindsight, it was more than that. Paris later revealed her struggles with childhood trauma, particularly from her time in an abusive boarding school. The public and the media had long mocked her, often disregarding her personal struggles. Looking back, this interview serves as another example of how the media failed to recognize or respect the emotional toll of celebrity life. Corey Feldman's chilling warning on The View. In 2013, Corey Feldman appeared on The View to discuss his memoir, Choreography. The book detailed his experiences as a child star in Hollywood, including the dark reality of exploitation and abuse he and other young actors faced. However, instead of empathy, the interview quickly became dismissive and uncomfortable. Feldman tried to bring attention to the serious issue of child abuse in the entertainment industry. He explained how powerful people in Hollywood had taken advantage of young actors, including himself and his late best friend, Corey Haim. "There are people that were the people that did this to both me and Corey Haim that are still working. They're still out there, and they are some of the most rich and powerful people in this business," he warned. Rather than taking his words seriously, the host seemed skeptical. Barbara Walters, in particular, dismissed his claims, saying, "You're damaging an entire industry." Despite his attempts to bring awareness to a critical issue, the conversation felt like an attempt to downplay or brush aside his concerns. Taylor Swift's sexist comment on the Grammy red carpet. In 2015, during the Grammy Awards red carpet event, Taylor Swift faced an uncomfortable moment that highlighted the pervasive sexism in media interactions with female artists. While speaking with Entertainment Tonight, reporter Nancy O'Dell made a comment implying that Taylor would not only win awards that evening, but also attract numerous men. O'Dell remarked, "You're going to be walking home with more than just a trophy tonight." "I think lots of men."
You're going to walk home with more than maybe just a trophy tonight. I think lots of men.
Taylor responded, "I'm not going to walk home with any men tonight. I'm going to hang out with my friends and then I go home to the cats."
I'm not going to walk home with any men tonight. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends and then I go home to the cats.
This interaction highlighted the frequent objectification and trivialization female celebrities endure. It shows how they often focus on their personal lives rather than their professional achievements. Mariah Carey's uncomfortable moment on The Ellen DeGeneres Show. In 2008, Mariah Carey appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show to promote her album E=MC². At the time, rumors were that she might be pregnant with her then-husband Nick Cannon's child. Rather than allowing Mariah to address or dismiss the speculation on her own terms, Ellen DeGeneres put her in an incredibly uncomfortable situation. As they sat together, Ellen pushed Mariah about the pregnancy rumors. When Mariah tried to avoid the topic, Ellen decided to test her live on air by offering her a glass of champagne. "Let's toast to you not being pregnant," Ellen said, pouring the drink.
Let's toast to you not being pregnant. If you're not pregnant, then we should. My goodness.
Mariah laughed nervously, clearly caught off guard. "I can't believe you did this to me, Ellen," she replied, trying to brush off the pressure. Ellen kept insisting, "Just take a sip. That'll prove it." Mariah hesitated, holding the glass but not drinking from it. She pretended to sip, but Ellen caught on and loudly pointed it out. "You're not drinking, you are pregnant."
You're pregnant! You're pregnant!
The audience laughed, but Mariah's discomfort was obvious. Years later, in a 2020 interview with Vulture, Mariah finally addressed the moment. She revealed that she had actually been pregnant at the time and later suffered a miscarriage. "I was extremely uncomfortable with that moment," she admitted. "I really have a hard time with people forcing me into a situation like that." Given how Mariah later spoke about her struggles with pregnancy loss, this interview now feels deeply inappropriate and even cruel. Robert Downey Jr., 2015 Channel 4 interview. In April 2015, Robert Downey Jr. sat down with British journalist Krishnan Guru Murthy for an interview with Channel 4 News to promote Avengers: Age of Ultron. At first, the conversation focused on the film, but a few minutes in, Guru Murthy started asking personal questions about Downey's troubled past. He brought up the actor history with addiction, his time in prison, and even a quote from a New York Times interview where Downey mentioned overcoming his struggles with drugs and alcohol. "You've talked in other interviews about your relationship with your father and the role of all of that in the dark periods you went through," Guru Murthy said.
Your relationship with your father and, the dark periods you went through.
Do you feel you're free of all of that now?
You think you're free of all of that?
Downey, who was uncomfortable, tried to keep things light. "I'm sorry. What are we doing?" he asked with a nervous laugh. But Guru Murthy didn't back down. He continued pressing, asking if Downey's past shaped his political views. At this point, Downey had enough. He looked off camera to his team, stood up, and politely ended the interview. "I'm just not that interested in this," he said as he walked away.
You seem okay, it's just getting a little dinosaur in your...
No, look, I don't want to do that.
Thank you.
The moment remains one of the most famous examples of a celebrity shutting down an uncomfortable press interaction. Anne Hathaway, 2012, The Today Show interview. In December 2012, Anne Hathaway appeared on The Today Show to promote Les Miserables. However, instead of discussing her performance, host Matt Lauer fixated on an unfortunate wardrobe malfunction that had happened the night before at the film's premiere. As soon as Hathaway sat down, Lauer wasted no time bringing up the incident. "Anne, nice to see you. Seen a lot of you lately," he said with a smirk, referencing the paparazzi photos that had circulated online.
Let's just get it out of the way. You had a little wardrobe malfunction.
Hathaway tried to steer the conversation toward more serious topics. "It was obviously an unfortunate incident," she replied. "It kind of made me sad on two accounts. That we live in an age where someone takes a picture like that, and we all see it, and that it's kind of accepted as entertainment."
I was very sad that we live in an age when someone takes a picture of another person in a vulnerable moment, and rather than delete it.
Instead of acknowledging her point, Lauer continued, jokingly referring to the situation as a lesson learned, before finally transitioning to discuss Les Miserables. Given the later allegations of inappropriate behavior that led to Lauer's firing from NBC in 2017, this exchange feels even more unsettling in hindsight. Brooke Shields' 1981 Barbara Walters interview. In 1981, 15-year-old Brooke Shields was already a rising star after her controversial role in The Blue Lagoon. That year, she sat down with Barbara Walters for an interview that, in hindsight, is deeply disturbing. During the conversation, Walters repeatedly asked Shields about her body and appearance in a way that now feels shockingly inappropriate.
Well, maybe not as high as equal.
So stand, because we haven't really seen you standing next to someone.
No.
For instance, Walters asked, "Do you have any secrets from your mother?" and then shifted to personal topics about her relationships and image, despite Brooke being just a teenager.
Do you have any secrets from your mother?
No, we really tell each other everything.
But the most unsettling moment came when Walters asked Brooke to stand up and show off her body on national television. Shields, still a child, complied, turning around while Walters and the audience scrutinized her. At the time, interviews like this were normalized, but today it's widely criticized as an example of how young actresses were objectified by the media. Brooke later admitted in interviews that she felt uncomfortable, but didn't realize how wrong it was until she got older. Joaquin Phoenix, 2009, David Letterman interview. In February 2009, Joaquin Phoenix appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman. He was sporting a scruffy beard and dark sunglasses. His behavior was odd, he mumbled, gave vague answers, and seemed completely detached.
Are you?
Letterman, known for his sharp wit, took full advantage of the situation. "So what can you tell us about your days with the Unabomber?" he joked, referencing Phoenix's disheveled appearance. The audience laughed, but Phoenix barely responded, occasionally stroking his beard and staring blankly. At one point, he pulled gum out of his mouth and stuck it under Letterman's desk. The awkward exchange continued until the host finally wrapped things up, saying, "Joaquin, I'm sorry you couldn't be here tonight." The crowd erupted in laughter, treating Phoenix as a punchline rather than a guest. For months, media speculation ran wild. Was Phoenix having a breakdown? Was he on drugs?
Never say never, right? I don't know.
You don't know what?
I don't know I don't know what'll happen.
A year later, it was revealed that the whole thing had been a performance piece for his mockumentary, I'm Still Here. While it was a brilliant experiment, it also exposed how Hollywood and the media are quick to mock someone who appears mentally unwell rather than show concern. Keira Knightley's 2004 interview with Jonathan Ross. Keira Knightley has long been admired for her talent, but early in her career, she also faced scrutiny over her appearance. Throughout the 2000s, the media constantly speculated about her weight, with tabloids and interviewers repeatedly questioning whether she had an eating disorder. Keira has spoken about how damaging this experience was. In a 2018 interview, she revealed that she was repeatedly accused of being anorexic, despite never having had an eating disorder. "I was really thin and I had no boobs, so I got called anorexic," she recalled. The speculation became so overwhelming that she even had to take legal action against a publication that falsely claimed she was promoting an unhealthy body image. In another interview, she spoke about how Hollywood's obsession with actresses' bodies took a toll on her mental health. "I was labeled as something that I wasn't. It took a long time to get over that," she admitted. The constant focus on her weight, rather than her work, led to a breakdown at 22, forcing her to step away from the industry for a while. Michael Jackson, 1987 Diane Sawyer interview. The media's obsession with his appearance. In 1987, Michael Jackson sat down for a highly publicized interview with Diane Sawyer. At the time, he was one of the most famous people in the world, yet the focus wasn't on his music or artistry. Instead, Diane repeatedly pressed him about his skin color, plastic surgery, and personal life, making the entire interview feel invasive and uncomfortable. Michael tried to keep the focus on his work. He expressed frustration over the media's obsession with his appearance, particularly the rumors that he had undergone extensive plastic surgery or was trying to change his race. Diane Sawyer asked, "People have noticed that your skin color has changed dramatically over the years. Are you trying to be something you're not? Do you wish you are the color you were?"
The color you were again.
Do I wish I was the color? You have to ask nature that. I love black.
Michael Jackson said, "That's ridiculous. I have a skin disorder that destroys the pigmentation of my skin. It's something I can't help." Despite his explanation of vitiligo, Diane continued questioning him as if he were hiding something. She also brought up rumors about plastic surgery, asking how many procedures he had undergone. Michael Jackson said, "I've had very, very little. You can count them on 2 fingers." He also had one of the very uncomfortable interviews with Oprah where she kept on pestering him about his skin color. Even though he tried to move on, the tone of the interview suggested doubt, as if he wasn't being believed. Scarlett Johansson, 2012 Avengers press tour interview. During the 2012 Avengers press tour, Scarlett Johansson faced a string of sexist and inappropriate questions while promoting her role as Black Widow. While her male co-stars were asked about their characters, stunts, and acting process, Scarlett was only asked about her body, diet, and clothing. In one interview, a male journalist wasted no time before asking, "Can you wear underwear under your Black Widow suit?" Scarlett Johansson said, "What kind of question is that?"
Now, were you able to wear undergarments?
What is going on?
Instead of stopping, the interviewer continued pressing her about the tightness of her outfit, ignoring the fact that she was there to discuss an action film, not her wardrobe. Later in another interview, she was asked, "Did you have to diet for this role? What's your workout routine?" Scarlett called out the double standard immediately. Scarlett said, "You never asked the guys this question. Why don't you ask them what kind of diet they were on?" Her frustration was clear. While her male co-stars were taken seriously as actors, she was treated like eye candy. Rihanna, 2009 Diane Sawyer interview. In November 2009, just months after being assaulted by Chris Brown, Rihanna sat down for an interview with Diane Sawyer on Good Morning America. At just 21 years old, Rihanna had to relive the traumatic night while being asked probing questions about why she stayed with Chris Brown after the assault. She was visibly emotional but remained composed. At one point, Diane asked her, "Why did you go back to him?" Rihanna, trying to explain the complexity of the situation, said, "I just felt like he made that mistake because he needed help. And who's going to help him? Nobody's going to say he needs help. Everyone's going to say he's a monster without looking at the source."
I wouldn't drop it. I kept saying I couldn't take that.
Rather than respecting her emotions, the interview continued pressing into personal details about her relationship, making it feel more like entertainment than a serious discussion about domestic violence. Looking back, the interview feels exploitative because it treated Rihanna's pain as a spectacle rather than focusing on the broader issue of abuse and support for survivors. Kim Kardashian, 2011 British talk show. Can you imagine being told you have no talent for live television? That's exactly what happened to Kim Kardashian during a 2011 interview on Alan Carr. Chatty man. Alan Carr didn't hold back when questioning Kim about her fame. At one point, he bluntly asked, "So Kim, what is it that you do?"
But what is it you actually do? That's what I want to know.
The audience laughed, but Kim looked uncomfortable. She quickly responded, saying, "Well, I guess it depends on how you define talent. I've built a successful brand, and that takes skill." Carr smirked and continued pushing, making light of the fact that Kim's career was often tied to her looks and reality TV fame, rather than a traditional talent like singing or acting. Looking back, this moment highlights how Kim was often dismissed despite her massive influence in entertainment, fashion, and business. Over the years, she has proven her critics wrong, turning her fame into a billion-dollar empire. However, this interview remains one of the most awkward moments in her early career. If you like watching more videos like these, do not forget to like, comment, share, or subscribe.